everyone, it's Deb here, and I want to give you an update for week 27. I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news is I wasn't able to follow my carb challenge as much as strictly as I thought I would. I cannot keep it below 40. And I know that everybody that's doing this challenge struggled with that. Some people seem to be able to keep their carbs, below 40, and some don't. So I'm just one of those that keeping it below 20 made me feel sick. And even though I limit and I don't have sugar carbs or flour, like wheat flour carbs, I don't have like pastas or breads or anything like that, it still was hard to keep your carbs down because there's carbs in everything, even in your high protein foods like the yogurts and the cheeses and things like that, even peanuts, fiber, you've got some fiber in there. A lot of your veggies have fiber. So, it really is hard when you can eat more. And even though I thought I tried to keep my calories lower, but it wasn't any easier for me. She thought it would be easier. Elena from Obesity Help, who swears by this, very low carb, higher protein, said she thought it would be easier to keep calories below 800 because we're not eating as many carbs. But for me, it wasn't. I was still hungry. I still wanted food. So pretty much my calories were the same between 1,000 and 1,200 is what they were, on average. So I didn't change my calories any really. My protein, I was over 100, right around 100. That I managed to do. But my carbs, the good news is my carbs I was able to reduce. I was able to reduce my carbs to keep them below 60 most days. I mean, there was a couple of days I went over 60. But in general, I was able to keep it below 60. And I've, kind of slowly over the last week and a half kind of tailored my carbs back down. So that I think helped because my weight loss has picked up again. So I think it did sort of help break my stall, or it could have just been coincidence. But I was looking back at my my weight loss over the last month or so, and it really has slowed down. Because I was looking back, so if I can look back at the very beginning, okay. So the month of August, when I had my surgery, I started at my highest weight was 230, which was right before my surgery. So 227 was at my pre-op appointment. So it kind of, I go by 230 just because it was like the week before. But, so basically the month of August, I went from 230 to 209.5. So basically 20 pounds the month of August, which a lot of people lose 15 to 20 pounds that first month. From September 3rd to October 1st, I went from 206 down to 197. So that was almost 10 pounds. And then from October 1st to November 5th, I went from 197 to 185.6. So that was like 11 pounds in October. November 5th to December 3rd, I went from 185.6 to 179.8. So that wasn't a whole lot. That was like what? 180. So basically 6 pounds for all practical purposes. And then from December 3rd to December 31st, I went from 179.8, so basically 180 to 173. So that was another like 8 pounds. And then from December 31st to January 28th, basically another month, I went from 173.4 to 170.4. So only lost 3 pounds a month of January. Big drop. And I really didn't change anything the first part of January, and I didn't really have trouble with eating over Christmas holidays. So I think it's mostly just a shift that happens that I've heard about, where your body just kind of shifts as you approach 6 months out. You can eat more. I know my hunger increased in January, so I probably eat more calories, and that's why my weight loss slowed in January, because I definitely felt more hunger. And that's why I kind of buckled down the beginning of February and said, okay, I'm going to mess around with what triggers my hunger. And I think I figured out that the sugar and the flour, wheat flour kind of carbs, will trigger me to be hungrier and to want more carbs. So I definitely have been limiting my carbs to fiber, the carbs that are in vegetables and fruit, the carbs that are in, and I even have to watch fruit carbs, because the fruit carbs being sugar, I think that's pretty dang close to the refined sugar, and it tends to trigger me to be hungrier. As good as they are for you, you have to kind of balance that. So let's see, the week before the carb challenge, I started at 170, which is where I was at on the 28th. And I started the carb challenge on that Friday, so 4 days after that, right, the 1st. The 1st I was still 170. And then on the 3rd, which was just a couple days after, before I had my colonoscopy, so I hadn't done the whole clean out thing yet. So I lost 2 pounds. I went down to 168 the first 2 days of the carb challenge, where I did keep my carbs relatively low. I know they were below 50 until the end of the second day. So, and I stayed 168 all last week, and then today when I stepped on the scale, I was 166.8. So over the last week and a half, I have lost more than I lost the entire month of January. So I think that as far as this new phase, and I might shift again, that the carbs below 60 is what I'm aiming for, and protein over 100, not much over 100, because I get sort of really sick of protein when I get that high. It's kind of like I just don't want it anymore. And then my calories have been between 1,000 and 1,200, somewhere in there, depending on the day. I'm trying to keep them closer to 1,000 if I can, but they go over that. So anyways, that's, the good news and the bad news about the whole carbs and the carb challenge and the weight loss and things like that. So I think I broke my stall, so there's more good news than bad. Otherwise, I've been working on trying to get off my CPAP, and I don't know if anybody out there has been sleeping with a CPAP. Some people were put on a CPAP before their surgery because they were diagnosed right before their surgery with sleep apnea. I've been on it for more than 5 years. I was sleeping with a CPAP. So it's like 2008, I think, when I started. I went to see my pulmonary specialist last week, and he looked back in my records, and it was 2008 that I was first tested and diagnosed with severe sleep apnea. So I think now I don't need my CPAP, or for sure I can reduce the pressure on it. The problem I'm having trying to figure that out is I'm having trouble sleeping with my CPAP off, not because I can't breathe, but because I'm so used to having the forced air that my mouth ends up falling open to pull in more air, because I'm used to getting it forced through my nose. So just breathing normally through my nose at night, my body's going, wait, I want to have forced air more. So I think it's a brain thing that I need to just adjust to. But I'm getting tested Wednesday night. He's sent home. He's having me do a pulse ox, which is a little machine that's got a long cord, and it attaches to your finger, and it checks your pulse and your oxygen levels all night long. It tracks them. So it can tell when you're awake and when you're asleep, and when your oxygen levels dip while you're sleeping and things like that. So I really want to be able to sleep decently without my sleep CPAP, and right now I wake up a lot. I did better last night because I had this contraption, it's in the other room, that kind of holds my mouth a little. It kind of reminded me, it goes around my ear. It's kind of like a shoelacy kind of feel to it. It kind of holds my mouth shut. It just kind of reminded me to keep my mouth shut more, and I think it did help from when before my mouth didn't get quite as dry. But still, about halfway through the night, I ended up putting my CPAP back on just because my mouth got too dry and I was having trouble sleeping. So that's something I have to work through, but I'm hoping I can do this pulse ox test half with my sleeping without my CPAP, at least half the night. If I can make it the whole night, great, but if I can only make it half the night, at least he can look and compare half the night with and half the night without, and see if my oxygen levels are that different. If they're not that different, then it's just a matter of retraining my brain to sleep without the CPAP. If they are different, then I do need to do a sleep study to check how much I can lower my levels. So anyways, that's about all that's been going on this week. I appreciate everybody joining me with this carb challenge. I think a bunch of people have gotten a little bit out of it. I think it's a good test to see if you're somebody that's carb sensitive and if it makes a difference in your weight loss. So anyways, I will talk to everybody later and catch up with you probably Friday, because that'll be the 2 weeks after the carb challenge, and that's when the carb challenge will end. But hopefully it doesn't really end. It just sort of, continues on if it worked for you. Thanks. Bye.